This video is part of an 11-part series that'll be going up on my channel for the next month and a bit, during which I'm going to lay out the top 10 players at every position, culminating in my second top 100 NPB players video. If you're here from day one, welcome, and if you're joining me further down the line, the playlist for these videos will be in the description. Feel free to skip this bit if you've already seen one of these videos, because this part will be the same for every video. These players will be ranked using a similar system to the one I used in my first top 100 video like 2 years ago. First, you take a player's average wins above replacement per season, then multiply that by their 7-year peak WAR to give you a points score. A player will have had to play at least 5 years in NPB to qualify for this list, unless they are a DH, in which case it's 4. Why so low? Well, I wanted to include both foreign players and players that are currently playing in NPB. Unlike last time, however, I will not be penalizing domestic players who barely played in their first couple seasons in NPB, as it isn't really a player's fault if they were called up before they were ready. However, seasons at an end of a player's career in which they did not play much but still tried to hold on will count against their score. Why am I ranking them like this? Well, I dislike subjective rankings and wanted a way of making an objective ranking without just ranking players by wins above replacement, which anyone can do if they know where to look. Speaking of, all the data from 1936 to 2022 comes courtesy of NPBstats.com, and anything from 2023 and 2024 comes from Deltagraphs. Both sites use the Fangraphs WAR model. With that formality out of the way, let's jump into it. Left field is probably the most maligned position in baseball. Before the DH, this is where you put the worst offender on the team, the old guy who couldn't run anymore, or the guy whose bat was too good not to play him. You'd think that reputation would go away with the invention of the DH, but no, now people call it the second DH. In fact, the Central League still doesn't have a DH, so the reputation remains doubly so. With that being said, that means those who stand out at the position do so because they are some of the greatest hitters of all time. With defense being an afterthought, there really isn't any excuse not to be. And we'll see that with the top 10 left fielders in NPB history. Born and raised in the shadow of Fujidera Stadium, it almost seemed predestined that Masahiro Doi would star for the Kintetsu Buffaloes one day. And that day came sooner than he thought, because when the Buffaloes approached him in 1961 while Daitetsu High School was practicing at Fujidera, he immediately decided to drop out and join up. His reason for doing so was simple. His father was killed in action before he'd even turned 2. And he was raised by his mother in the family's used bookshop. He needed the money, and playing for the Buffaloes gave him the opportunity to live at home. Debuting at just 18 years old in 1962, he was awful. But since the team was also awful, it allowed him to get reps at the NPB level. By the time he was 20, he'd hit 28 homers and was the new face of the franchise. He would continue to be the Buffs' premier bat through the 1960s. Then in 1970, he would be prosecuted for illegal gambling as part of the Black Mist scandal, and would be suspended for a month. But then, in 1971, he hit a career-high 40 home runs. After the 1974 season, Doi would be traded to the Taiheiyo Club Lions thanks to worries about his defense. Kintetsu would immediately regret the trade, as the PL officially adopted the DH about a week later. Doi would become the face of the Lions offense through the late 70s, and was a veteran presence when the Lions moved to Saitama in 1979. However, his age caught up with him, and with a new manager coming in, Doi would retire after the 1981 season. That gave him the dubious honor of being the only member of NPB's 400 home run club to never play in the Japan series. Born Masayasu Takemura to Japanese colonists in what is now Gyeongbuk Province, South Korea, Masayasu Kaneda is one of the best players you've never heard of. As a child, his family would move back to Kyoto, and he would be adopted by the chief priest of the Heian Shrine, hence the name change. After starring at Heian High School, he would be signed by the Hanshin Baseball Club in 1942. He would choose going pro over the safer route of going to university because of his family's financial situation. However, the Hanshin Electric Railway Company did work to protect him by giving him an essential job at their Hamada depot. Kaneda would serve as a key piece of Hanshin's 1944 JPBL team, and when the war ended, he would continue to dominate the league, helping the Osaka Tigers win the 1947 title as well. This became known as the Dynamite era in Tigers lore, and Kaneda was one of the pieces at the forefront. When the league split in 1950, Kaneda stayed loyal to the Tigers and was once again one of their best players, with his magnum opus being an 8-war campaign in 1953. After struggling along for 2 more seasons, Kaneda would retire in 1957. In recent years, he's posthumously re-entered the conversation as an analytical darling thanks to the emergence of era-adjusted stats, with some pushing for him to get back on the experts ballot for the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame. Regardless if he makes it in or not, he remains a Hanshin Tigers legend. One of the best offensive players in the 1960s, Shinichi Eito, also known as 8-Man or 8-Ball, is one of the best offensive players in Shinichi Dragons history. But when he started his career, no one wanted to sign him. This is back before the days of deep scouting departments in the draft, so if you didn't play at Koshin, you were basically invisible. And he was unable to help Kumamoto Commercial make Koshin. So, Eito played for Nippon Steel Futase, a mining company. Unlike most corporate ball players today, who have a low-level desk job to skirt around the rules, Eito actually worked in the mines while playing for the company team. This would turn him into corporate ball's deadliest power hitter, and he would be snapped up by the Dragons in 1959. What followed was a decade of domination. Eito was the best hitter on the Dragons from virtually day one, and was the linchpin of the offense. From 1963 to 1969, he never hit fewer than 20 homers in a season, and his 211 WRC Plus in 1959 remains the best offensive season in Dragons history. However, in 1969, the Dragons hired Shigeru Mizuhara, and the two had a massive falling out which led to Eito retiring, coming out of retirement, and getting traded to the Lotte Orions for 1970. There, he helped them win their third PL pennant with a monstrous second half. From there, Eito would become a transient bat, and he would bounce around with the Whales, the Lions, and back to the Orions before retiring in 1976. He would be posthumously elected to the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in 2010. Nicknamed Macho Man, Masataka Yoshida was one of the key pieces that turned the Oryx Buffaloes from a joke of a franchise to one that dominated the early 2020s. Originally hailing from Fukui and attending the dominant Suruga Keihi High School, Yoshida would attend Aoyama University. He would go on to dominate the Toto University Baseball League, which led the Oryx Buffaloes to take him in the first round of the 2015 draft. He was initially confused by the pick as he felt the Buffaloes already had a strong outfield, but he stepped in and was a dominant force from pretty much day one. While injuries hampered his first 2 seasons, he would jump from that to an Ironman streak that lasted 3.5 years, all while being the offensive face of the Buffaloes. That continued when the Buffaloes pulled off their last of first run in 2021, with Yoshida putting up a 193 WRC+. He then one-upped that with a 200 WRC+, giving him the second best offensive season in B's franchise history. When the 2022 Japan Series came around, Yoshida would make up for 2021's defeat, playing his heart out and walking off Game 5 with a towering third deck blast. Since 2023, he's been with the Boston Red Sox, and while he hasn't come anywhere close to his NPB numbers, he is still a plus bat on a team that needs him. And again, this is only an NPB list. MLB numbers don't factor into it. Whether or not he returns to NPB in the future, his 2022 ring will forever make him a B's franchise legend. If the Pacific League had to choose one player as their offensive face, I think 9 out of 10 people would choose the no-brainer option: Kensuke Kondo. Born and raised in Chiba, Kondo would step onto the national stage when he went across the bay to play for the powerhouse Yokohama High. This netted him a 4th round selection by the Hokkaido Nippon Ham Fighters. While it would take a few years for him to get going, as the Fighters geared up to try and win a title before Shohei wanted out, Kondo would break out too, putting up a 152 WRC+ as a DH. Then he got injured in 2016, but when he came back in 2017, he put up a 231 WRC+ and 4.2 WAR in just 57 games. That is a 10.5 WAR pace. He would be the best player on the Fighters thereafter. However, the post-Shohei Fighters were not good, not making the playoffs after 2018. So it's pretty understandable that when he declared free agency after the 2022 season, he didn't really see a future in Hokkaido. So he signed the largest contract in NPB history with the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks. Remember how I said that if Kondo had kept up his 2017 pace over a full year, he would have put up a 10 WAR campaign? Well, he's come pretty damn close these past couple of years. In 2023 and 2024, he was simply put the best player in NPB. Not Munetaka Murakami, not Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Kensuke Kondo. He is both an elite contact hitter and an on-base machine, and despite not really being a home run hitter, he found his power stroke in Fukuoka. He also figured out how to play defense, having his first elite defensive seasons as well. Time will tell just how long this lasts, but if one thing is for certain, Kensuke Kondo is the current face of the Pacific League. Born Jihon Kim to Korean parents in Hiroshima, Tomoaki Kanemoto, like many of his Hiroshima-born peers, would star for Koryo High School. However, after he graduated in 1987, he got no attention from any of the major universities. He tried and failed to get into Hosei University, then Chuo University, and after that he tried to walk on to the lowly Yakult Swallows, but he couldn't make it. Tohoku Fukushi University would take a flyer on him, and Kanemoto would go on to dominate the Sendai Big Six University League. In 1990, he would lead the school to a national championship. That, plus his selection to the Japanese collegiate national team, got him noticed by a few NPB clubs, and he'd be drafted by the Hiroshima Carp in 1991. By 1994, he was one of the faces of his hometown club, combining great offense with serviceable defense, at least in his first few years. He also never missed a game, earning him the nickname Tetsujin Jr. But by 2002, with the Carp falling further and further backwards and in a tight financial situation, Kanemoto, at age 34, elected to declare free agency and would sign with the Hanshin Tigers. From there, he became one of the offensive faces of the 2003 and 2005 pennant-winning teams, continuing to be one of the team's best players well into his late 30s, still not missing a single game, or even a single inning. In fact, Kanemoto has the world record for the most consecutive innings played with 13,686. Not Ripken, not Kinugasa, not Gehrig, Kanemoto. After 2 rough seasons, Kanemoto would go out on a high note in 2012, putting up a 119 WRC+ as a 44-year-old before retiring. He would be elected to the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in 2018. Nicknamed Big Ben, thanks to sharing a last name with the iconic Japanese director Tsutomu Ben Wada, Kazuhiro Wada is arguably the best Japanese hitter of the 2000s. Born in Gifu, he would dominate high school baseball but wouldn't get any offers from NPB clubs or the major southern universities. So, like Tomoaki Kanemoto before him, he would attend Tohoku Fukushi and dominate the Sendai Big Six. But unlike Kanemoto, he wouldn't get drafted right away. So, he joined Kobe Steel's Industrial League team, batted .429, and got taken in the 4th round of the 1996 NPB draft. But still, it would take until 2001 for him to crack the Lions lineup full-time. But as soon as he did, he was a monster. Hitting back-to-back with the Venezuelan slugger Alex Cabrera, the two would utterly destroy the Pacific League for the next few years, winning a pennant in 2002 and a Japan Series in 2004. As Seibu started falling behind in the mid-2000s, Wada would declare free agency and sign with the defending champion Shunichi Dragons in 2008, only to watch from the sidelines as his old team won another championship. Still, Wada was the offensive face of a rapidly aging Dragons team in the late 2000s, when he put up a 162 WRC+ and 7 WAR at the age of 37 in 2009. Most thought that would be his final hurrah. Nope, in 2010 he put up career highs in hits with 171, homers with 37, and WAR with 9.8. At 38 years old. In fact, it's the best season by any NPB player over the age of 35. He would lead the Dragons to back-to-back Japan Series appearances in 2010 and 2011, and would continue to rake well into his early 40s. Even at 43 years old in 2015, he put up a 120 WRC+. Now, prepare to be angry, because this man fell off the ballot. If there was ever a more damning criticism of Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame voters, it's that. Joining the Kintetsu Buffaloes in 1996, I don't think anyone thought Carl Tuffy Rhodes would be an NPB superstar, much less play in the league for over a decade, much less be the greatest foreign player in history by the cumulative numbers. A premier power hitter who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, Rhodes quickly became an adopted son of Osaka, gelling well with his teammates and being a core piece of a Buffaloes team that was an offensive monster, but lacked any kind of pitching to speak of. Rhodes would have his first 40-homer season in 1999, and in 2001, he and the Buffaloes went on a run for the ages, where Rhodes would set a new PL home run record with 55 homers as the Buffaloes overcame the Lions and the Hawks to win their first pennant in 12 years. But as Kintetsu slipped further and further into debt, and after another 50-homer season in 2003, Tuffy would be forced to look elsewhere for the multi-year deal he wanted, and he would end up signing with the Yomiuri Giants. There he hit 45 bombs and became part of a team that had the exact same problem that the Buffaloes did. Oops, all offense. After a down year by his standards in 2005, Rhodes would leave to try and make an MLB comeback. After failing to rejoin his hometown Reds, he considered retirement. But he would be called back up as a publicity stunt by the Buffaloes. The Oryx Buffaloes. Rhodes is supposed to be just a crowd-pleasing concession, but he went on to put up 2 more 40-homer campaigns and never had his WRC Plus drop below 160. He would retire on his own terms in 2009. I think I speak for all of us when I say, put him in the Hall of Fame, you cowards! The first Korean-Japanese Hiroshiman superstar, Hun Jang, better known as Issa Harimoto, is the only NPB member of the 3000 hit club. Thanks to his Korean heritage, a childhood burn that left his right hand nearly useless, surviving the atomic bombing of his hometown, and watching his sister die of atomic burns, it's safe to say Harimoto didn't have the easiest start to life. He channeled that into his personality. He regularly got into fights in high school, where he survived a stabbing and being hit in the face with a brick. His family, concerned for his safety, would send him to Osaka to finish high school, which he described as saving him from a life of crime. Originally planning to return home and play pro ball, the Toei Flyers offered him a better deal, and he joined up with them in 1959. Player and team were a perfect fit, as Harimoto's rough-and-tumble attitude meshed well with the team that had gained the nickname the Komazawa Barbarians. Harimoto would become a contact and power-hitting dynamo. From 1960 to 1974, his WRC Plus never dropped below 150, and he put up 2 200 WRC Plus seasons during that time. Only 7 other players have done that in NPB history. Harimoto would be a no-doubt MVP when the Flyers won the PL pennant in 1962, and he would lead them to victory over the Hanshin Tigers in that year's Japan series. A decade later, new ownership and a desire to purge the old guard led to Harimoto being traded to the Yomiuri Giants for Kazumi Takahashi. There, Harimoto would help the aging Giants win 2 more pennants in 1976 and 1977. He would pick up his 3,000th hit and 500th home run with the Lotte Orions in 1980 and would retire in 1981. He would be elected to the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in 1990. Known as the Batting Master, Mr. Orions, or simply the All-Star Man, Kazuhiro Yamauchi is one of the greatest outfielders not just in NPB history, but in the history of baseball itself. Growing up poor in Ichinomiya, he starred for Aichi Tech as a pitcher and would drop out to try and join his hometown Junichi Dragons. They wouldn't take him, so he went to Gifu to join Kawashima Spinning's Industrial League team. There, he became an outfielder. Playing for an Industrial League team that wasn't particularly prestigious paradoxically allowed Yamauchi to get noticed by more scouts, and he would join the Mainichi Orions in 1951. By 1954, he was the face of the franchise, smacking 28 homers and winning an RBI title while also putting up a 179 WRC+. His WRC+ would not drop below 170 until 1963. That is how consistently excellent Yamauchi was. You'd think an outfielder with that kind of hitting prowess would be seen as a defensive liability, right? Nope. Yamauchi was a consistent plus defender, and at the turn of the 1960s, he was one of the best defensive outfielders in NPB. His 10.6 WAR in 1956 is also an Orion's Marines franchise record. Yamauchi would also be involved in the first blockbuster trade in NPB history, being dealt for fellow Hall of Famer Masaaki Koyama in 1963. Now with the Hanshin Tigers, Yamauchi would once again be the face of the offense and help them win the CL pennant in his first year with the club. But after a down season in 1967, he would be traded to the lowly Hiroshima Carp. There, he blossomed as a leader and continued to rake until he retired after the 1970 season. Yamauchi was the first NPB player to hit 300 homers in his career, finishing agonizingly close to 400. He would be inducted to the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in 2002.